This program was made possible by the grassroots volunteers of United Monroe.
Hi, I'm Dan Castricone, United Monroe's candidate for the New York State 98th Assembly District, with some very important news for you. We recently learned that because the ballot is so crowded, United Monroe's name will not appear on the ballot. That's right. Although my name and that of United Monroe's candidate for Monroe Town Council, Dennis McWaters, will be on the ballot, we will appear on the right-hand side of row G, the Women's Equality Party. It's odd, but it's true. So don't let anybody tell you that you won't be voting for United Monroe. You will. Look for Dan Castricone and Dennis McWaters on row G ballot line that says Woman Equality. Now, thanks for your vote, and now back to the show.
And welcome to this week's edition of Hello Hudson Valley. I'm Emily Convert, your host, and I am very pleased to be sitting next to Dan Castricone today, who is running for the 98th State Assembly seat. Dan, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Emily.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
So why don't you tell our viewers about the 98th Assembly District?
Great. The 98th Assembly District is a very large district. It runs from Deer Park and Port Jervis down through Minnesink, Greenville, Warwick, into Tuxedo, Monroe, and then into the town of Ramapo. So it covers the western edge of Orange County, and then it goes into Rockland County and covers some great areas in Rockland, Sloatsburg, Montebello, some areas in Spring Valley.
Great. And now, why don't you tell us why you decided to run for this seat?
Oh gosh, you know, I've been in politics for a long time, but I've never considered myself a career politician. It's never been where my bread was buttered. I've always, I've owned my own business, and I'm raising a family here in Orange County, in Tuxedo. And, I'm very concerned about the things that I see going on in the area. I've always been driven to be part of a public service kind of lifestyle. I've always enjoyed that. I think I bring some, some skills and some talents to the table that, that can help, that can make, our Hudson Valley a better place to live. If I were in Albany and successful, I would work very hard to do that.
Excellent. And I know that you have a legal background. You have a law degree.
Yes, I graduated from Pace University School of Law, which many people don't realize it's one of the top environmental law schools in the country. Took some environmental law classes there. Before that, I had a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Buffalo. I've run my own business since 1987, an Allstate agency, Allstate Financial Services. Many times during my career, I've also been part of Allstate's corporate culture. I had profit and loss responsibility for a $100 million division of the Allstate Insurance Company. I pretty much ran all of Westchester County. And I've always had my own agency too. It's a pretty well-rounded experience, I think. And then, I was sitting at my kitchen table back in 1996 or 97, and the local, political committeeman came to the door and said, "Would you sign this?" And I did. And the next year he came back and said, "Dan, we need someone for the zoning board. Would you do it?" And I did. And a couple of years later, they said, "Dan, we need someone to run for town council. Would you do it?" And I did. And from town council and deputy town supervisor to the Orange County legislature, I've been in this ever since.
Excellent. And I know that I've enjoyed listening to you on WTBQ radio as well. You've had a show there for years.
Right, for about 5 years, every Thursday afternoon, we talk politics, but I try not to make it just about politics. Like this past week's show, we had the executive director of Safe Homes, which protects battered women. And we had a great conversation for about half the show on on some of the things that the county needs to do in order to take better care of women. When it comes to domestic violence,
right.
How we need to get the word out. Learned some very interesting things about it seems that the fastest growing segment are teenage girls. Are running into this. So that's just an example of the kind of things that we do on the show every week, and I really enjoy it.
Well, you do a terrific job on the show. I must say, you're incredibly articulate. Your topics are always very interesting. A lot of human interest mixed with some politics. You're always very level-headed and reasonable. I've always enjoyed listening to your program.
Thank you.
So your opposition in this race, first I think I'd like to mention that you have been endorsed by the United Monroe Party.
Very, very proud of that.
And for those viewers at home who don't know about United Monroe is a grassroots independent third-party citizens group who was formed because of the obvious lack of representation by the Monroe Town Board of its citizens and the apparent favoritism that we've noticed for one municipality within Monroe. Monroe has the unique village of Curious Joel within its boundaries, in addition to Harriman Village and the village of Monroe. And half of the population of the town of Monroe is the Hasidic village of Curious Joel. This poses a unique situation because that one village votes as a block, as is also seen in parts of Rockland County as well, similarly. And the people outside of Curious Joel were feeling extremely disenfranchised and unrepresented, and therefore United Monroe was born. And we've been a force in the region for justice and cracking open a lot of the injustices.
Kicking down doors,
Yes.
I think, is better than cracking open, because that's really what you're doing, and it's
Right.
terrific. I'm so proud to be a part of it. When I was a Republican, and I went to our Republican convention, and I received, I guess, about 2/3 of the votes of all the people at the convention, except for the village of Curious Joel, who voted in block in that convention for my Republican opponent in the primary, and he ended up winning the party endorsement.
Right.
I didn't think that was fair
Right.
or right,
Right.
because I know what he had to promise in order to get that endorsement. So I challenged him in a primary, and we did exceptionally well. I darn near beat the other three candidates. It was a 4-candidate race. I darn near beat the other three combined, except for the village of Curious Joel again. My opponent beat me 810 to 5 in the village of Curious Joel, and he wound up winning the endorsement. And that 810 to 5 is a cross that he's had to bear ever since, because I will not let the people of the district forget it. I know what he had to promise in order to get that, and I refused to do it, and because I refused to do it, I didn't win. But that doesn't mean we're out of the race. Same thing happened with the Conservative Party. He beat me in the Conservative Party primary 59 to 1 inside the village of Curious Joel, otherwise we would have won that.
Right.
And funny thing is the same thing happened in the Democratic primary. The rank and file Democrats throughout the district were supporting a woman named Crystal Serrano. And I had met her at functions in Port Jervis and around town at a senior picnic. Seemed like a very nice woman, a reasonable woman. And she wound up getting virtually no support from the village of Curious Joel. And one of the significant other of a Monroe Town Board member, who has given Curious Joel everything that they have asked for ever since he's been on the board. That favor was returned, and Curious Joel voted in block for his girlfriend or significant other, and she wound up on the ballot. So the two people that the regular Republican committee people and voters wanted, and the Democratic committee people and voters wanted, are not on the ballot on those lines. Curious Joel has picked both candidates, both Republican and Democratic candidates, in order to control this ballot.
And this is for the entire assembly district. That's what it's. If people go away from watching this interview with one bit of information, it's so important for people to understand that one village in an entire assembly district that encompasses all of the towns that you mentioned at the top of this interview,
Right.
is controlling who is representing the entire district.
On both parties. To me, it's absurd.
And as you've eloquently stated before, one community whose interests are so vastly different
Right.
than the rest of the population within this district, in terms of development, in terms of density. If you look at the density of the rest of the town of Monroe versus the density within Curious Joel, it's
12,000 per square mile inside the village of Curious Joel, 401 per square mile outside of the village of Curious
I actually
Joel.
think it's higher than 12,000 per square mile.
This is the last numbers that I've seen.
Okay.
But I'm sure it's increasing daily. And they're singular in purpose, which is continued expansion, regardless of the impacts that it's going to have on the environment, on the economy, on the beauty of this area that we all love. The reason why we moved here, we could have all settled in an urban area if we wanted to, and it seems to me very unfair that the urban area has moved to us. And this is what the village of Curious Joel, the leadership there, and not everyone there. I know there's a large segment inside of the village of Curious Joel who is not in line with this, annexation, expansion at any cost.
Yes.
But I've studied these issues, and I look at the Ramapo River, which is a beautiful waterway. It serves as the drinking water for millions of people in New Jersey. It refreshes all of the aquifers for everybody in Ramapo. All of their wells, all of that drinking water comes from the Ramapo River. And the village of Curious Joel, if it expands by 507 acres, which is what they're trying to do, if we put in the people, we do the math, we figure out how many people are going to be there, there'll be 60,000 people in that village in no time at all. The Ramapo River simply cannot handle the effluent from 60,000 people, which is where it will all go. The Ramapo River can't handle the runoff from all of that non-porous surface. That's where it's all going to go. And that'll be the end of that river. I was looking at, you look online, if you Google, dead and dying rivers, you see what these things look like. And you find them in China, and this is not what the Northeast is. This is not what we're about.
Not in the beautiful Hudson Valley.
And we're going to kill that river.
Absolutely.
They're going to kill that river. And when we went to the scoping session for Curious Joel, they were talking about the annexation, and what I mean by scoping session is, they're supposed to take a look at all the environmental impacts if they expand there. And, their whole environmental impact study, their whole draft, didn't mention the Ramapo River once. How can you look at the environment and not even consider where all of that sewage is going to go?
Right.
So I find it very frustrating.
Well, in our research, as part of the United Monroe organization, we have discovered numerous EPA and DEC violations that are current.
Right.
And the Village of Curious Joel leadership are notoriously bad stewards of the environment.
As I looked at some of the reports of the environmental, violations, one thing I noticed about them is it's the same violation over and over and over, because the leadership of that village just doesn't seem to care if they're fined, or I guess they believe that they'll never be fined. If they're given a violation, they don't fix it. I was on a town board. We had a sewer plant. You'd get a heavy storm and you'd get extra runoff, and there'd be a violation, and you do everything in your power to immediately fix it because you care about the environment, because you take seriously when the state government says you're doing something wrong, you want to do it right. That does not seem to be the case in the village of Curious Joel. They don't seem to care.
No, and what's even sadder is the sheer number of politicians who seem to get elected thanks to this block of voters, and then turn a blind eye to these types of situations and problems, such as the water pipeline that is
Right.
being constructed by the village of Curious Joel. It was initially 18 inches, now it's a 24-inch pipe, and that's okay. Let's just pretend that didn't happen.
And the tapping of the wells. What town is that? Cornwall's wells
Yes.
that they're tapping into.
Yes.
That they will absolutely drain.
Yes.
That town will be without water. And there doesn't seem to be any consideration for their neighbors, which is terrible. And you talk about the politicians that are beholden to Curious Joel. We look at this assembly race. The village of Curious Joel has picked the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidate. There are 20,000 people in that village, roughly 7,000 or 8,000 voters. A lot of them are kids or younger. If the village of Curious Joel doubles in size, before long there will be 60,000 people in that village. With 60,000 people in that village, you're looking at probably 20,000 votes, all for one candidate or the other. The average voter in Orange County will never have a say again in who the county executive is, who the district attorney is, who the county clerk is, who their congressman is, who their state senator is, who their assembly person is. When one village can take their thumb and push it on that scale with the weight of 20,000 votes one way or the other, the elections that we come to live for and appreciate, and you stood up as a kid and you said the Pledge of Allegiance in class because you thought it was about democracy, and anybody could grow up to be anything, and anybody could grow up to be president. Well, I got to tell you, you can't grow up to be county executive in Orange County if this thing doubles, unless you get the blessing of the village of Curious Joel. And it's not right. It shouldn't be this way. And I find it so frustrating that this is the path that we're heading, and I find it so frustrating that elected officials and people that are running for office are willing to sell their souls in order to stay in office and allow this to go on.
Agreed. And that's precisely why Unite Monroe was formed.
Yeah.
For representation, for civil, accountable, transparent government, and some justice, because it's sorely needed.
And if the environment isn't important to you, if your political rights, the franchise, the right to vote, and have your vote mean something, if that isn't important to you, 93% of the people inside of the village of Curious Joel are on Medicaid. If we triple the number of people there, we're going to triple the amount that we spend on social services there. And that is going to impact the pocketbooks of every person in the Hudson Valley. We simply cannot afford. I look at the county executive the other day, did his budget address, and he talked about a $60 million deficit. What would that deficit be if we had 3 times as many people on social services as we do now? We simply, cities don't grow in places because people want a city there. Cities grow because there are resources available that make it economical to grow there. Cities grow because there's an industry there to employ people, and that's why people move there, and that's how you get a city. There's no industry in Monroe. There are no natural resources in Monroe. There's no waterways. There's nothing here except the desire for one group of people to expand uncontrollably. And it will eventually collapse. It'll collapse upon itself, and it'll take the rest of Orange County and the Hudson Valley with it.
And I do think it's important to also stress the fact that there is a population within the village of Curious Joel that is not interested in seeing their government control yet another 507 acres of land.
Right.
Because there's a great deal of disenfranchisement on a smaller level within the village of Curious Joel as well.
Absolutely.
But thank you for those comments, indeed.
Yeah.
But the school district is another major factor as well. We've seen the recording of this NPR program.
Mm-hmm.
Ira Glass did a piece. It's available online to listen to. I listened to it this week, and it's incredibly troubling. It's the story of East Ramapo School District and how the Orthodox and Hasidic population voted themselves onto the public school district school board in order to control the finances of the school district, and their children do not attend the public school district. Their children attend private yeshivas. And what ensued as a result of this shift of power and the stripping of all programs and the massive layoffs and the children not receiving art and music and sports and anything extracurricular in nature, and the high school students having basically half a day of study hall and having almost no academic courses available to them, making it almost impossible to graduate in 4 years. And there was recordings from these meetings, these school board meetings, and the angry parents and the attorneys for the school board abusing the public, lashing out at the public in the most degrading manner imaginable. It's nothing short of shocking. It's just shocking. And to think that if this land, this 507 acres of Monroe land that the village of Curious Joel wishes to annex, is then populated densely by
Right.
people who do not send their children to our school district and can then potentially vote in our school district elections, we're looking at the same scenario popping up in Monroe.
Absolutely. It's the same block vote that you'll get in the school board elections, and there's no way to outvote it. If it triples in size, which is what I expect will happen if they're successful in this annexation, and that'll be the end of the Monroe Woodbury School District. When you look at it, which is it's an absolute gem in the state, and the property values in the rest of the Monroe Woodbury School District, not only in Monroe. I mean, Monroe Woodbury District runs into Warwick, into Tuxedo, into Chester, I think into Blooming Grove, right?
Yes, South Blooming Grove.
All of these property values are all propped up based on the availability of a top flight education. And when that goes, so do the property values go, and so do the future of our children. And I've seen it firsthand. I ran a business in the East Ramapo School District, and I saw what happened there, and I saw the nightmare of the cronyism that went on in that district, with who got the jobs, which lawyers were hired, and all its those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. Well, this is, if you forget what happened there, you're going to get it in Monroe.
And this is recent past.
Yeah, it's not that long ago.
Shame on anyone for not seeing the signs. And that's why the United Monroe organization has been so very pleased to have had you step up even before the convention.
Oh, wow.
and oppose annexation, which was a political risk on your part, but it was a risk that was appreciated by so many people in Monroe, to say, here's someone who, despite the ramifications of that action, stood up and said, you know what, this annexation is no good for Monroe, it's no good for the county, it's no good for the 98th Assembly District,
Right.
and I'm opposing it.
You know, when you look at what's going on in New York right now, I mean, like I said, I run an all-state agency, and I started in 1987, and one of my first clients was the Burns family. They were a couple. They were in their 40s. I was in their 20s, right? So I wrote their insurance policies, and later on, their kids got to be of an age where they added their children onto the policies as drivers, right? And then the kids go away to college, and you expect the kids to come home and get their own insurance policies and buy their own houses and buy life insurance, and that's how an insurance business can expand over time and grow. Well, the Burns children never came home. They went to college, right? And then they found opportunities in other places, in other areas, because they weren't taxed to death. Businesses weren't taxed to death. And when we're supporting such a heavy weight of social services in this area, in the state itself, that we lose the opportunity for kids to come back and start their own businesses and grow. And then you get the exodus of the seniors. I talk to people all the time, and they tell me, Dan, as soon as I can retire, we're going to North Carolina, we're going to Florida. Well, I had a conversation the other day with a woman from Monroe about whether they could move to Delaware because there was no income tax once their kid was out of school. And there's nobody left here to carry that burden except for folks like us that are raising kids right now. And we got to do something to stop it. One of the things that we can do to stop it is we can stop the crazy annexation and overpopulation of people that are going to need social services in this area, in the Hudson Valley. And that's one of the things I want to work on when I get to Albany.
Thank you so much, Dan. And I'm getting the sign that it's now time for our man on the street portion of Hello Hudson Valley. And the question to the citizens on the street today is, will you be voting on November 4th?
Yes, I will be voting on November 4th. It's very crucial for Orange County.
The country is founded on liberty, and if we don't vote, we don't have our liberty. Simple as that.
I am absolutely going to be voting on November 4th. I feel that this election is a very important election, not only for the town of Monroe, but also for all of Orange County and New York State as well. This is our crucial vote. If everybody doesn't get out and vote, we may start to lose the integrity of the Hudson Valley that we love so much.
Of course, I'll be voting this November 4th. I feel like voting is a privilege that our ancestors gave us, dying in wars, to give us a chance to vote. It is our only way for us as citizens to speak up and elect our elected officials who will represent us in our community. I feel like absolutely one vote can make a difference. One vote added up between all of us can definitely make a difference as who represents the majority of the people in the area.
And we are back. Very good. I want to thank you so much, Dan, for being here today.
Emily, it's been great. I really enjoyed it. Folks, you're going to have to look for me on the ballot, but I'm there. Dan Castricone. You'll find me in the United Monroe line. Please go out on November 4th and vote. It's so important.
It sure is. Thanks again. Until next time on Hello Hudson Valley. Have a good night.